I did want to give just a couple quick announcements for the rest of today and how it's going to go. So we're going to have a great conversation with a gentleman I've looked up for a long time, and I'll share kind of a little bit of how we know each other in a moment. After that conversation, some of you will be leaving the room to go to a different ballroom, depending on which mastermind you choose. Some of you will be staying in the room. We have 2 masterminds that are taking place in the room. Let me share with you what those are, because I know I have them somewhere. Oh, they're in my notes. I guess I should have started with that. So for those of you that are interested in learning how to build a bigger listing business based on agent-to-agent referrals, that will be taking place in the main ballroom. We've done this before where, because the room is big enough, we just put a group in the front corner, and then we put a group in this front corner since we have a lot of room up here at the front of the stage. So the agent-to-agent referral conversation is going to take place right here in the main ballroom. Thank you for getting that up. And that's going to take place right over there. So we'll call that stage left. All right, so that'll take place after the interview with Lance is over. Also in the main ballroom is phone and face-to-face prospecting. I should probably tell you, first of all, some of the people that we have running these things have either been involved in businesses that I'm affiliated with or have personally worked for our team. And so we handpicked people that I look up to for these particular categories. So agent-to-agent referrals, again, are going to take place over there. Phone and face-to-face prospecting will take place on stage right. All right, so that's phone and face-to-face prospecting over there. Agent-to-agent referrals will take place over there. In ballroom A, which is essentially you go out these doors and you make a right. Okay, there's a whole other set of ballrooms over there. In ballroom A, you'll see we're doing the social media lead generation mastermind with the master herself. We're also doing database and past client events in ballroom C, also over there. So A, B, and C are over there, and I will be doing one conversation mastermind around marketing and mass advertising. Now, as I mentioned earlier, because of course when we put these together, my response was, I don't want to actually do one because I want people to actually, get the most out of some of these other experts. You're hearing from me for 2.5 days. Well, because people ask a lot about our marketing and so forth, and we take a lot of listings, we figured we would put me in charge of one. What I will tell you is that if you're not in a position to where you've got a large marketing budget, $20,000 a month, $50,000 a month, whatever number it is you consider large, honestly, don't waste your time. Because I don't want you thinking about something that you can implement a year or 2 or 5 years from now when you're at that level. I'd rather you go to something that is something you can implement right away. So, of course, if you show up to mine, great, I'll love it, and we'll have a great conversation. But ultimately, if you're not in a position to have a large marketing budget, you're not going to get as much out of mine as you may think. All right, so there are those. I just wanted to give you some important updates. And we'll put this back on the screen after the interview so you know where to go. But the ballrooms A, B, and C are over there. We got 2 of the ones taking place in here. Okay, so what we're going to, and one more thing. The party tonight, Monday night, always, it's kind of like becoming a thing for our events. The first night, we're calling it our welcome party. This particular year, it's our summertime in Northern Michigan party. Everything is Northern Michigan themed. We've got wine tastings, we've got great entertainment, a lot of fun stuff that's going to be taking place. That takes place at 7:30 tonight at the Plaza, which the easiest way to get there is you go out the front of the hotel and just follow the signs. You turn right and you'll just follow the signs. We've got signs out there so that way it's easier for you to get to that. And that runs from 7:30 to 10. It's always a good time. We've got hot hors d'oeuvres, cold hors d'oeuvres. So, if you're okay with a light hors d'oeuvres, then you don't need to do dinner. But if you want to have a full dinner and come to that after or whatever, that's fine too, or go do dinner after somewhere else. That takes place tonight. That's our main party. Everyone is welcome. It's included in your ticket package. And we've got some wine tastings that we've paid for. There is a cash bar if you're not a fan of wine. It's all Northern Michigan wine. Which, by the way, this is a fun fact. There's over 40 wineries in Traverse City. And what a lot of people don't realize about Traverse City, now, of course, if you don't like sweet wine, you're probably like, yeah, big deal. Okay, I'll go to California or Sonoma or whatever. What a lot of people don't realize about Traverse City, it sits near or on the same parallel of a city in Germany where they produce the best Riesling in the world. And so that's why, if you're like, why is the wine so sweet here? The climate is actually the same as Germany. Okay, so now for what I would consider the main interview of the day, if you will, the one-on-one interview. This particular gentleman and his team are fascinating to me because, you know, I've been doing this 17 years and they've been doing it like 7 years, and they're already doing like double the business that we're doing. So he and his team are obviously doing something right because they're performing at a very high level. I always like to have people that are thinking big and performing at a high level on stage for an interview or for panels, because even if you're not at that level of production yet, you know, one of my biggest belief systems is, when it comes to building a big listing business, is who are you exposing yourself to? For those of you that went to half-day sessions, I talked a lot about exposure. Who are you getting around? Who are you spending time with? Who are you listening to on a regular basis? And the reason why I keep bringing this particular gentleman back is twofold. Number one, because he continues to push me to be better and continues to push me to think bigger, and also provides a lot of value for our audience. Now, one thing that is unique about Lance and his team, just a couple short years ago, 18 months ago maybe, there were some serious hurricanes that hit Houston, Texas. And, you know, they went from having, I'm just butchering these numbers, probably 150 listings in inventory available to sell to potential buyers, maybe the number's 200, he'll tell us, I'm sure, to 0, because you couldn't sell anything in the city because everything was literally underwater. So, and actually at that time, we flew down and helped out Lance, and I know for those of you that are with Keller Williams, a lot of KW agents went down and helped out as well. We found a pretty cool video which actually shows a lot of what took place down there. And I'm showing you this not so much as a reminder because maybe you've seen it on the news or you know someone that was affected, but imagine having the largest real estate business in the city and overnight you are out of business. You have no listings that you can sell, and certainly no buyers that were buying in Houston, Texas at that time, right? They all shifted their focus to Austin or Dallas or some other city in Texas because they didn't want to go through that experience again. So for those of you that don't recall, here's what took place, and Lance and his team were in the thick of it as it happened. Literally in the thick of it, because they got out and helped a lot of people and shut down the office for 2 weeks at least. So if we have that, we can play that.
It's easy enough to drop my boat in the water, and I've just been shuttling people to dry land. This is probably my 10th run. Probably, and I've been taking anywhere from 5 to 8 or 9 people per run.
Apparently CNN was covering a Trump tweet. That was the only video we could find was a Fox News one, sorry. So, without further ado, let's bring out Lance Loken. Come on, Lance. How are you, buddy? Grab a seat.
That
Okay.
brought back memories. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we got to spend some time together.
Yep.
Although I'm sure
And thank you.
whenever natural disasters like that strike, it brings the entire community together. So I'm sure there were some good things that came out of it as well. So since it's fresh in our minds, since we just saw the video, can you just spend a couple minutes sharing with us what that experience was like?
Sure.
Selling real estate when that was happening?
Exactly. And thank you for having me here today. This is awesome. So it was the last week of August, and we knew the rainstorms were happening. We had already gone through a tax day flood that year, and we also had a Mother's Day flood, or Memorial Day flood, sorry.
Yep.
And so we had already experienced a couple of pretty major events, and then this one happened. And we had 62 closings scheduled for that week when the hurricane came about us. Obviously, we only had 2 close. And
that was because not that the buyers and sellers couldn't, I mean, some of them physically wouldn't be able to show up to a closing, obviously, but the banks all said, cancel the deals. The banks all pulled out, right? Isn't that what took place?
They have to re-inspect the homes.
Yep.
In fact, one of the closings that you're talking about, the lady took a kayak to her title office, picked up the paperwork, brought it back to land so that they could close that day.
Wow.
That was one of the 2 closings.
Right.
I mean, it was devastating. I mean,
Yep.
you're talking, in some places, 18 to 20 feet of water
Yep.
that you were under.
Yeah. Is the city still recovering from that today?
Yes. We've got a lot of investors that have gone in and purchased homes, and they're coming on the market. Obviously, they're coming on the market for top dollar because the investors feel like it's prime location and everything.
Yeah.
And people are still scared. I mean, it's been less than 2 years.
Yep. Yep.
So
And so what was, for you guys, I mean, what did you do when that happened? Obviously, you know, your listing inventory is gone, your pending transaction's gone. How did you guys respond? What did you do as a team?
well, we did not sit on the phones all day long and ask if anybody's looking to buy or sell a home.
Nope, I bet.
That was not the right approach.
Yep.
And hopefully I don't choke up about this because it was, shoot, there we go.
He always does, by the way.
Our team, the team, I'm so proud of them. We literally shut down the offices for 4 days. We were using GroupMe to communicate with our team.
Yep.
And then we get a call on Tuesday afternoon as the rain is subsiding, and it hasn't subsided yet at that point, but it was still subsiding. And we get a call from KWRI saying, we just lost the warehouse that we were looking to set up camp at. What can you do to help us out? And we're like, how big do you need? 25,000 square foot warehouse. And we're like, okay,
Yep.
you know, and literally so much stuff is underwater. So it was like finding a needle in a haystack. We get on GroupMe, and less than an hour later, one of the softball coaches of one of our listing agents had just gotten a 25,000 square foot warehouse that was high and dry.
Yep.
He said, take it, use it, whatever you want. It was completely empty because he had just gotten the warehouse. So we literally went there from that Wednesday until a week after Labor Day. We were at the command center every single day for over 2 weeks. And what I'm so proud about is there was no less than 30 people from our team each day doing whatever it took to help out.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. We spent, at least a day or two together coming to your office, and you guys had everything set up.
You even went out and helped some people.
Oh yeah, I mean that was the culture of your office. Every single day when they showed up, instead of to work, it was to go help in the community.
Right.
So fast forward to today.
Yep.
Last year, you guys closed how many transactions?
2,135.
2,135. Let's hear it for 2,135. I was half kidding when I said he does like double the business we do. You really do double the business we do, which is why I keep having you back. So one thing that's, if you would, not everybody knows who you are. Just share a little bit about your story, when you got started in the business, what you were doing before that. Because one thing I think that's really fascinating is it's not like this is something you've been doing for 20 or 30 years. A lot of times people look at people on stage and they say, well, yeah, Jeff's in the business 17 years, or yeah, he's been doing it 34 years. You've been in the business how long?
We're in our 8th year.
8th year. 2,000 transactions, 8 years. What were you doing before, and how did it build so quickly? How did you get to that level so quickly?
Sure. So I was a chief financial officer. I think there's a Francesca's Collections up here.
There are plenty of them.
So they're based out of Houston, and that's how I got to Houston, Texas, was got a job there.
Yep.
And things were going great. We started out with, when I joined their organization, we were at 43 stores. And when I left, we were up over 700. And that was an amazing experience. And my wife proceeded to tell me, Karina, she said, hey, I love Houston so much, we're never going to leave. So I got real smart and got into oil and gas in 2007, right at the height of the economy.
Yep.
And less than 3 years later, over 400 of us lost our job in May of 2010.
Yep.
And had offers all over the United States. And Karina said, great, either commute or find a way to work. And she said, why don't you get into real estate? And she had just gotten into real estate for about a year before.
Yeah.
And she said, why don't you do this with me? I said, there's no way in hell I'm stooping to that level. And
well, you know, in real estate, right, you run out of things to do. So, well, let's go sell real estate. That makes sense. We're qualified.
Yep. And I mean, I used the comparison of a used car salesman anytime I thought of a real estate person. So then fast forward to the end of 2010, woke up one morning and said, fine, let's do this. And in the Houston, there's 37,000 agents, and there's a lot of big producers in town. Several of them were doing over 750 units a year,
Yep.
Close to 1,000. And so I'm looking at these people's numbers and like, what are we gonna do? You know, how are we even gonna make a dent in it? So the first week of January 2011, we sat down at our dining room table, looked at who the #1 producer in Keller Williams was at that time, and it was Joe Rothschild, who happened to be our broker.
Yep.
And he was doing 225 million.
Yep.
So looked at the number and said, okay, in 7 years, we want to beat that number. So what do we have to do to beat that number?
Yep.
And work those numbers back to a point where it became achievable. And we wrote down the number 8 for a first year because it looked like first year producers were doing that.
Yep.
And then just built the numbers up to get to the point of 250 million by 2017.
So when you said you had to work backwards, I mean, did you go all the way down to the how many people we'd have to talk to, how many appointments we'd have to go on? Is that what you mean by that?
I didn't go that far at that time.
Yep.
I literally was looking at the volume perspective,
Yeah.
and then how many transactions it took to get to that volume,
Yeah.
using average sales and things
Yeah.
like that.
Did you have a coach at that time?
Not then. July of 2011, we got a coach.
And then you started going a little deeper on the numbers,
Yes,
probably.
yeah, a
Okay.
lot deeper.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So you went from 8 million to what was that? How did that track go?
So we did 8 the first year. The goal of the second year was 20. We achieved 24. The third year, the goal was 60. We achieved 84, and then went to 137, 218, 320.
This is volume, not,
Yeah,
not
just volume.
units, right? That's great. And so, what do you think, based on what you know, because you've been around the industry now for a long 8 years, what do you think is the difference between how you were able to do that in 8 years, when #1, most people never get to that level, #2, if they do get to that level, someone like myself, it's going to take me 20 years, if you think about it, right? Because I'm probably 3-4 years away. Our team's probably 3-4 years away from being close to that number. So you accomplished in 8 years what is going to take me 20. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, because we treated this as a business from day one. I think that's first and foremost. Secondly, we looked at our biggest gap in business, and the first year we knew nothing, so we focused on buyers because I thought selling was stupid.
Yeah.
Like, why waste all that money to invest on listing a house?
Yep.
And so that's all we focused on that first year, and then that was our platform.
Sure.
And then the next year we focused on sellers and listings.
Yep.
Set a goal of having 60 active listings by July 1st
Yep.
of that first year, or of that second year. And then got into regionalizing the team, and then getting into radio and television, things like that. But we always
Yeah.
had a platform to build upon. So I
Yep.
think that was another huge key. And finally, and most importantly, it was the people that we hired.
Yeah. So two things I heard in there, and I do want to talk about the people you brought on. It sounds to me like you didn't implement something new until you mastered one or two things first, right? That growth was, so many agents we find, they sprinkle things around. Oh, we got to do this. We got to add this source. We got to add this technology. We got to add this CRM. We got to add this to the mix. And they want it now, and they want to do it all now. It sounds to me, and I've known you for now, basically the 8 years you've been in the business. You guys took one thing, mastered it, moved on to the next, right?
Yes.
And what were those?
So the first year was buyers.
Yep.
And learning the buyer mentality. And I think that actually benefited us on the sell side.
We talked about that on the listing
Yep.
panel, about how it builds your confidence in
It does.
learning the business and learning the inventory.
Yeah. Confidence. When we started on the listings and made that goal of 60 active listings, I went on my first 12 appointments and got no every single time.
Yep.
It was an awesome start.
Yep. So you were 0 for 12.
Yes.
And
Over 12.
Why did you keep going? At that point, you say, you know what? Let's just go back to the buyer stuff. Why'd you keep going after 0 for 12?
Because we had set out a goal of having 60 active by July 1st.
Okay.
And I love goals, and competition's my number one strength. So
Yep.
I need to have something in front to go after.
Yeah.
We may fail at it, but
Sure.
And we did. We achieved it on July 2nd instead of July 1st.
Oh,
so
bummer.
we are.
I hate when that happens.
I know.
Okay.
But you had the big goal
Yep.
in front of you.
So it was buyers first, then it was listings. And where were these listings coming from?
Red X.
Okay.
And
Dialing. Outbound. Yep.
Karina, my wife, she is the absolute best at lead generating, lead prospecting. You and I
Yep.
call it prospecting.
Yeah.
Because
Well, lead generation is like the soft word,
Yep.
so people don't get mad and run away and find another business. It really is just prospecting.
it is.
Yep. So we have that same opinion.
Yep.
So it was phone prospecting, okay, and then what was it after that? What did you master after phone prospecting?
Then we got into regionalizing the team. We started hiring in different areas
Yep.
of Houston. And then expansion was just starting out. As we were about 6 months ahead of that becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And then the fourth year, we focused on radio and television. And the reason we marketed that way is because we had started hiring to cover a large area, and farming for us would not have worked well. You know, that would have been a lot of money to
Yes.
spend on
That
a
early
lot
on
of
in the business.
neighborhoods.
Yep.
So we focused on what the biggest ROI could have been, return on investment.
Yep.
So we focused on radio and television. Then we got into new construction.
Yep.
And then we got into really mining our data bank. At that time, we were just over 2,000, and we now are up to 68,000.
Yep.
And so we've just built upon each other.
Wow. So when you say mining your data bank, what does that mean?
That means you are doing a 33 touch or a 36 touch now on a consistent basis. You're getting in front of your clients every quarter, and we're doing a horrible job at it. Being at 68,000, we're actually taking KW Command, the initiative of that, and getting it down to about 6,000 in our data bank that we're going to truly mine, and then ramp it back up.
So I know your flight just got in like 17 minutes ago. What you missed this morning was exactly a lot of that conversation around stop trying to go big with a database.
Correct.
Stop trying to go big with a farm. Instead, condense it down to the people that know you, like you, and trust you, and refer you, and add value to them.
Correct. You should be getting 10%. You should be getting at least 10% of your business from your data bank.
Sure. Yep. So talk to me about staying in front of them quarterly. How are you staying in front of them quarterly?
So in person, we have 2 big events each year.
Okay.
We shut down the entire Houston Zoo on a Friday night.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I bet.
And then in the fall, we do a Pie Day, which is
Okay.
the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And we have 5 different locations around Houston where people can come and pick up their pie and visit, and we have hors d'oeuvres and everything like that.
So you're giving value to them
Yes,
without having to ask for business.
correct.
The law of reciprocation says when you do good for someone, at some point in time, it's going to come back to you.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
100%.
And that's what you're noticing now.
Yep.
Okay. Speaking of, I do want to, not to interrupt the pattern here. you had this, just this morning, we were frantically figuring out what we were going to do because we got a notification that his flight from Houston to Chicago was delayed.
Yeah.
And I know there's only a couple flights to Traverse City, so if he missed that flight because of the delay, we wouldn't be hearing him. So I'm reaching out to, Martin Boma, by the way, was very gracious. He said, hey, I'd be happy to step up and fill in his shoes, and Lance can do my session tomorrow. We got a notification that your flight was delayed, and it was supposed to leave at 11:30 or whatever. I'm butchering the times. Anyways, he only had a 40-minute layover to begin with.
Right.
Okay, so you got on your plane into Traverse City with how much time to spare? Because I know when you landed, you sent a message at, again, I'm probably butchering the times, like 11:40. His plane to Traverse City takes off at noon. He lands on the ground, first message, hey, just landed, 11:40 a.m. Right, so at this point, you guys know if you travel, the flight attendants are already discouraging you from running. Just go to the customer service desk and find another flight. You're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. Did that happen?
Yes, that's what they said to me.
Okay.
They said there's no way, because I was going in Chicago from Concourse C to F.
Concourse C to F at Chicago O'Hare. A, B, C, D, E, F. 3 terminals over.
Yep.
In Chicago O'Hare, like one of the largest in the country.
Yep.
And your plane landed 20 minutes before the next one was taking off.
And then the gate opened at 11:52.
So you got off the plane at 11:52. Your noon flight was 3 gates away. How did you get there in 8 minutes? And normally they close the door a few minutes prior.
Right. I ran my butt off.
You ran your butt off.
I was told as I was getting off the plane, there's no way you're going to make it. It takes you 15 to 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah, just go see customer service. They'll get you on the next
Thank
flight.
goodness
right?
I work out every day.
Yeah, yeah. So you sprinted. You
The
didn't
door
even-
was closed.
Yeah. You didn't even have to request one of those carts,
I did request a cart as I was running.
Did you? Okay.
And they said,
a guy passed you, and you're like, hey, let me hop on.
yep. And he said no.
Okay. So,
I was like, thank you.
yeah. So you're here. So thank you.
So the door was closing 12 o'clock, and I was screaming as I was.
Wait, don't try
Yeah,
to do it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks.
I've been there before. Now, that was, of course, not by your choice, but the reality is you made a decision that you were going to get on it regardless. And that's a testament to your strong will and the confidence in what you do. So we appreciate you for being so strong-willed.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about and by the way, everyone else appreciates it too. So let's talk about your top 3 sources of listing business today. Where does it come from? How did you arrive at these sources? Let's talk about that a little bit, because today's theme has been about the lead generation and conversion. Tomorrow is more so on the presentation and the follow-up after the appointment. So let's focus on your top 3 sources of business.
Sure. Well, I'm real excited because as of this morning, we've shifted our numbers a little bit. 2 years ago, our data bank was at 27.4%, and as of this morning, it's 30.1%, and it just became our #1 lead source. So our data bank is there at 30.1.
Yep.
Our radio and television is at 29.3, and our new construction is at 27.2 now.
Got it. So let's talk about we talked about the data bank a little bit. Let's talk about radio and television and then the new construction.
Sure.
So radio and television, obviously, we've had a lot of conversations because I do the radio and television in Michigan as well. It's very expensive. So number one, how do you justify the expense? And number 2, how do you track the ROI on it?
Yeah. So the way we started, I did do my research, and I know you've done your research as well. But it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You've got to grow the business and you got to get traction. So I was calling the top real estate agents in the United States, asking for their opinions. And fortunately for me, my father had grown up in radio and television in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So I understood the format.
Yep.
Then when we started, we had to take a pretty big leap of faith because in order to be successful in Houston, you had to spend no less than $12,000 a month. So that's where we started.
Minimum.
Yeah. And that's in the third year of business, which we didn't have that kind of money.
Yep.
So we go 6 months, And we get into the 7th month and we finally have a closing. So
Yeah.
that's 7 times 12, that's $84,000.
Yep.
And our first closing was an $80,000 mobile home.
Very real.
Fantastic investment.
I grew up in one of those.
Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
So how do you stomach that level of expense over that? I mean, you had to. I think the mistake a lot of agents make, and you tell me if you agree or disagree with this, is they say, you know what, we had a good closing month or two, our trajectory's good, I think we can do this. And then they spend the money, they spend the money, they spend the money, and then 3 months later, they're done advertising because they didn't get the results after 3 months.
Correct.
So what would you recommend? I mean, number one, 12,000 is not too far off for most markets, by the way. 7 to 10,000 a month is probably pretty reasonable if you want to do one of those sources big, radio big, TV big, or billboards or whatever. So how many months of not making any income? Okay, we're not even talking recouping your initial investment. How many months of not bringing in any income should a team or agent plan for when doing mass advertising like that?
So the thing that I think is huge is you've got to track your business and see what is coming down the path. If you go 6 months and you're not getting a single lead out of it,
Yeah.
you've done everything on your part to generate the lead,
Yep.
and you got to make sure that you're doing your part as well.
Yes.
You can't just expect radio and television to work or
Yep.
radio to work at that time if you're not calling and prospecting and
Yeah.
answering every one of those leads.
Yes.
So I started to see traction after about the 3rd month.
Yep.
And when we got to that 6th month mark,
And by traction, you mean just calls
leads coming in,
or
calls
leads
coming in.
in.
Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And then by the end of the first year, we had gotten up to just about 1-to-1 return on the investment.
At the end of the first year.
Right.
So, you know, $100,000, $125,000.
You're getting 125 in a GCI.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in other words,
That's not covering your expenses. That's just the amount of GCI
Right.
just for that.
So you're lucky to make money on that source.
Yeah.
Maybe 18 months from now, 24 months from now.
Yep.
Because the first year, at best, is a break even.
Right. And I planned on doing this for 3 years
Yeah.
to really, and you have to be committed.
That's the key. Because so many agents say, you know what, I tried it for 90 days, it didn't work, let's go on to something else. The reality is you better have that amount of money sitting in a bank account somewhere for 6, 12, 18, 24 months before you make a commitment to do that.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to be a situation where you're putting a lot of effort into something that is going to require a lot of post effort, if you will, and it'll be all for naught if you pull out early.
Right.
And that's the reality of what we see a lot out of agents in the business.
And oh, by the way, now our ROI is at 4.83-to-1.
Yeah.
So, and we've recovered all those
Sure.
losses.
Well, and the other thing I heard you say is there's some supplemental business there because you don't just do it because it's going to make the phone ring off the hook with a bunch of people that want to listen and sell their home with you. You do it because now when your agents go on appointments, it helps you
Exposure.
get contracts signed. When your agents are making outbound prospecting calls, it's a little easier to set appointments, right? That whole piece is a little harder to track,
Right.
It's more of an indirect supplemental piece, right?
Yes. And our inside sales agents are very trained to always ask for where the business,
Yeah.
where they called from or where we got the business from. And you try to dig deep because you want at least 2 sources, which
Yes.
is usually the case.
Yep, yeah, because otherwise they'll just say, we see everywhere. You
Right.
need to get very specific.
Yes.
So you know where to spend and where not to spend.
Specific stations as well, because
Yep.
we're on 6 different stations.
Yeah, so not just, I heard you on the radio. Which radio station do you listen to?
And
What's your favorite type of music or whatever?
right, and what's really cool about that is you go, oh, did you hear about us on 100.3 The Bull? Oh, by the way, we're on 93Q as well. We're also on Sean Hannity, we're on Glenn Beck. You
Yep.
know, you can tell them, oh, we didn't know you were there. And then you tell them about being on TV. So you can use it to advertise yourselves
Yep.
on those
Got it.
listing appointments.
So let's talk about your third source of business, the builder business, because
Yeah.
I know that is unique to you. And some people would say, well, yeah, of course Lance does 2,000 transactions because he's got all these builder accounts and so forth. So can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. Going back 5 years when we started a new construction, I felt like we could get a lot of buyer leads from the new construction piece. If we could show those listings and get buyer leads, eventually it would translate into a pretty big ROI.
Yep.
And it gave us exposure on the sellers too.
Yep.
and it was a huge cost up front.
Yeah.
And so again, from a traction standpoint, it was a 3 to 4 year vision of what it was going to do. And oh, by the way, last year's ROI, $2.5 million of it was from new construction.
Yep. Wow. How did you find these builders? Because if I'm in the audience, I'd say, okay, you know, maybe you've heard Lance before, maybe you haven't, but one thing I've always wondered, where do you get those relationships to get that many listings, to get that many transactions?
So looked for who the top 5 builders were in town.
Yep.
And then started hunting around for who had relationships with those builders. Mm-hmm. I'm not a people person, so you're not going to get me to be in relationship with people. So I needed somebody that was good at that.
Yep.
Found that person. He was a sales counselor at a different builder, but knew the builder I wanted to go after.
Yep.
So hired him to go after that organization, created that relationship, showed them how we were going to add value to them.
Yeah.
That was key.
Yep.
And then we started, and in the beginning we had to do those listings for free because we had to provide value.
Yep.
And so it was a huge expense for us.
I feel like a lot of agents are intimidated by builders. I feel like a lot of agents think that there's not really anything more or better they could do than the builder. So how did you show value to the builder? How did you convince the builder to say, you know what, I know you've got this salesperson sitting in here making $10 an hour and showing homes for you, but pay us. Well, I know in the beginning you did a lot of them for free because you were looking at the other side of the transaction. Correct. But how did you get them to enter into that type of an agreement with you and for them to see the value?
So I took ownership of that piece of it and said, we're going to hold ourselves accountable to you. And so every single call that comes in, we're going to tell you about it and we're going to show you the lead of that path, or the path of that lead.
Yep.
And nobody had ever done that before. Everybody was like, oh, give me the listings, give me the listings. And then they take all those leads and run off with them.
Yep.
We were saying, we're committed and we're going to be your third-party advocate. We're going to bring that lead to your community first.
Yep.
And if it doesn't work out, we did our part. We still get to retain that buyer. So it was showing them value and showing them accountability right from the get-go.
Yep. Awesome. One thing I've admired about the Loken Group and your team is your culture, the way you guys operate. Can you talk a little bit about that? What makes your team unique? Because I know you guys, you definitely have a lot of great people and a lot of people working cohesively together to make this 2,000 number happen. So what does that look like at the Loken Group?
Well, first, you hired the people to the core values of your organization. You want to make sure that you're hiring people that want to be in an environment that you want to hold valuable. Also, because I didn't like real estate agents, we didn't hire real estate agents. We hired people from corporate America that thought and talked the way that we did.
Interesting. Why didn't you like real estate agents?
Because I associated them as used car salesmen.
Okay.
And I didn't know any better. I mean, today it's vastly different. And our whole goal is to bring up this industry up to the level at some point in time somebody's going to say attorney, doctor, real estate agent, all in one breath from a professional standpoint.
Gotcha.
So you hire people that talk the talk.
And you can see that, by the way, because I've visited you and your team. You can see that in your team in the way you operate. Your team operates as a sales business.
Yes.
Right? It's not just a group of people having fun selling real estate. It is a sales organization, like any other sales organization.
Right.
And I see that in the way you guys operate.
And then everything's about the organization, has nothing to do with Karina or myself. Anything that happens that's awesome, we celebrate as an organization. Anything that's bad is my fault. And I take ownership.
Which, by the way, it usually is his fault.
Yeah, exactly, it is. And so having that mentality, you're the front for no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And then finally, you really give credit to the people that have brought the ideas to you.
Yeah.
We collaborate all the time. When we do our planning advances every September and come up with our 135 or our GPS, it's as an organization. It's not Karina and Lance saying this is the goal, these are the priorities, and these are the strategies. Collectively, we come up with it because then people get buy-in.
Love it. So what's next for you guys?
15% market share.
Okay. So Number one, that was a very fast response, so I can tell that that's on your mind every single day.
Every day.
All right, so what are you at now?
Right this second?
Yep.
2.84.
2.84%. Which in a large city like Houston is a lot. I mean, there are real estate brokerages, combined 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 offices that don't get to 2.5% market share.
Right.
What do you think is going to have to change to go from, we'll just round up and call it 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and so on? What is going to have to take place there?
Owning our data bank.
Owning your
really
data bank.
owning and creating a moat, like Gary Keller talks about all the time. Own that data bank and build a moat around it and provide so much value that they have no question of who to use.
Yep, love that. I hope you guys wrote that down. And that's obviously going to be something we're talking about over the course of the rest of the retreat. So
last planning advance, we were having a conversation, and Sarah St. Marceau, who runs our luxury division, we were talking about client experience, and she said, hey, I just went into this restaurant and had an unbelievable experience from beginning to end. Yep. The valet, blah, 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 amazing experience. And somebody in our organization said, so what restaurants were you at? And they said, Massone's. And they go, well, of course you were. And I stood up, I was in the back of the room, I stood up and I said, what would it look like when when somebody's sitting at a dining room table, they're talking about having a real estate experience and it was absolutely unbelievable. And somebody at the other table says, who did you use? And they go, the Loken Group. And you say, of course they did. I mean, that's where we're wanting to get
That's the pinnacle of what we're doing.
Yep.
Love that. Well, I wish we had more time together. Are you going to be at the party tonight?
Yep, I'll be there. All
right, cool. Catch up with Lance at the party, and let's hear it for Lance Loken. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, so a couple quick announcements before we break for our final session. We went a little bit over, but that's because I wasn't done talking to him, so sorry about that. Well, when you have someone at that level sitting next to you, you just, gosh, I could have came up with another 20 questions. So what we're going to do now, and we'll probably, by the way, for respect for everyone's time, at 5:15, when the masterminds end, if you guys continue to stick around and have conversation, I'm good with that. I believe, in my opinion, quite honestly, when I go to events like this, I get sometimes the most amount of value from the discussion outside, and that is, of course, why we've decided to add 2 days. Now we're doing 2 days of Mastermind, one today and one tomorrow. So hopefully you'll be able to jump into one of these. The last thing I wanted to say before I repeat the rooms, and I know they're probably going to put that up on the screen in a second. Tonight, the party, 7:30. It goes until 10 o'clock. Now I know that this hotel has a shuttle that connects to a casino. And I also know that the shuttle is 24 hours and the casino is 24 hours. So my hope is, and of course I'm going to check with the bus drivers, my hope is that sometime around midnight, all of the shuttles at one moment just somehow break down and nobody is going to the casino after midnight, because we've got a lot to cover tomorrow. Tomorrow, day 2, is without a doubt the longest day. So not only do you need to be here on time tomorrow, because we start at 9 a.m. sharp, we're actually doing something a little bit unique as well. From 8 to 9, we're doing coffee with our Glover U coaches. So we'll have coffee available to anybody that shows up early. They'll be there to answer questions and have some dialogue with you. So not only make sure you're here on time tomorrow, but also make sure you're sharp. And the only way to stay sharp in an event like this is getting the proper amount of sleep. So please do that. So if we could get these back on the screen, you guys, thank you. So we have the following masterminds taking place. There's 5 of them. We have the agent-to-agent referrals, which are going to take place at stage left. So we'll just gather around the tables over there, pull up some chairs. Stage right is phone and face-to-face prospecting. Social media lead generation is ballroom A, which is right out those doors. You make a right. Database past client events, also right out those doors. You make a right. That's in ballroom C. There's signs there too, so you'll see that. And then marketing and mass advertising will be in ballroom B. So hopefully you're able to make it to one of those. Get the most out of the mastermind. We'll see you tonight at the party. Thanks, guys.